Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Reframing Eye Care podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Pretty Barsa from the UK. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. Doing well. A bit cold, but it always is here, but colder than usual.
Yeah, it's freezing here in Rhode Island
Oh, is
today. Yeah,
it?
yeah. So,
Good.
I wanted to have you on the podcast because you do so much for empowering women, and you talk about the unfair female advantage, and you are an optometrist. So, I wanted to empower some of our female listeners today on this podcast. So, for those of you that do not know her, she is an award-winning optometrist, serial entrepreneur, TED speaker known for blending business with behavioral science, often describes herself as an accidental entrepreneur. She became the first optician in the UK to integrate full medical aesthetic clinic within the optometry practice, which is a bold move.
Yeah.
She credits herself for a unique perspective on women in business. Her focus has been helping high achieving women harness their unfair female advantage through emotional intelligence, resilience, and what she calls mental fitness, a true game changer in the leadership in life. And she's the host of the Women, Money, and Business podcast, which I recommend all the listeners to take a look at as well, where it explores the mindset and mechanics behind success. So it's about gang work, empowering women to build businesses and love what they develop with confidence and self-belief. So again, welcome to the podcast. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you so much for asking me and having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Can you describe yourself? How do you describe yourself as an accidental entrepreneur? How did the journey begin?
Yeah, so the reason I sort of say that is because I had no intention of buying a optician's practice. I never really thought that I was business minded, and to be fair, I never really thought about business. It was just an odd time in my life, and I went for a locum job position, and somehow walked out agreeing to buy an optician's practice, and then that's where kind of my journey began into entrepreneurship, business, leadership, mindset, all of that fun stuff. But it hasn't been easy. But then that's why I always say that I fell into it. It was a complete accident because there was no intention to go into business. I've loved research, love clinical practice. Always worked in hospitals prior to buying the practice. So it wasn't even like I was commercially aware or anything. I was literally a lamb to slaughter.
Yeah, it's so funny how we all have where we're supposed to be, where we want to be when we come out of school, and what I tracked to have wasn't where I ended up.
Yeah.
But I'm happy of where I ended up because it's where I'm supposed to be, and you don't really know until you try, right? And I always say, like, you meet people for a reason, whether it's for a lesson or just help you, guide you. And there's people over the years that really help me learn where the journey I'm supposed to be, where I kind of got complacent and, kind of really pushed me to be like, I should have my own business. I should do this. And some continue to do that as well. Why am I here? Why am I working so hard? And I think a lot of optometrists just want to, see patients and go home. But over the years, they realize, hey, I could do this too and have my own business, and I could be good at it as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, what inspired you to do your aesthetics clinic and teach you about innovation?
So for me, it was, I felt like, because I'm a very sort of, I like to do sort of all the courses that are available. So I always like to upskill myself, educate myself, because I just think we're not here for a long time. So why not absorb all the knowledge that you can? And I was reaching sort of, I felt like a ceiling in my educational journey within optics. And I just felt like there was this, I've done every course that was practically available. And I thought, well, what's next? Is this going to be it now for the rest of my career? And I've always liked the aesthetics world, but I've never considered myself, number one, imposter syndrome, thinking, well, who am I? How can I say that I can do aesthetics, because it's for doctors and dentists and nurses, and I'm an optometrist. So I grappled with that for a good few years before I actually took the leap. And then I always say that when there's like that breakdown moment, it's before the breakthrough is going to happen. And back in 2021, I had that breakdown moment, and I just thought, you know what? I need to do something that's going to sort of stimulate me and give me that that zing back. And I love optometry, but I just wanted that extra thing to add to it to make it even better, and just to use my skills, just to develop a new skill set. So then, even though I'd parked the thoughts from 2017 to 2021, I just decided, do you know what? There's going to be somebody out there that can probably train me in it. And I need to believe in myself first, and then I can find somebody that will believe in me. And that's when I sort of started my journey. I just thought, like, I'm just going to go to find the most credible person, a medical injector. I did various courses, and then I just thought, what, and like you mentioned before, what have you got to lose? You know, the only thing I'm going to gain is I tried and I potentially fail, but then I've gained so many skills in the process. And I felt like, because I was so passionate about skin anyway, it didn't feel difficult, because it was just like, well, like, this all makes sense. You know, this has happened to my skin, and how can I make my face look like, you know, the best that it can be? And the amount of times that my female patients would say to me when asking about their eyes, I say, you can't do anything around here, can you? You know, my crow's feet or stuff like that. And then I just thought, well, you know what, I actually can now. Like, I can actually say to them that, yeah, you know, we can do something like that. So part of it was a business decision, and realizing that I actually do enjoy sort of building a business, branding a business, and then creating that marketing and you know, plan for a business. But then a big part of it was a passion project, and then it's just the two have just come together quite nicely in a not an accident, I suppose. It's more strategic than that, but it's just a passion and then profit, I suppose.
Yeah, it seems like your journey, you kind of got, you know, you're like, you challenged yourself, you met the criteria, you did well, and now you're like in the middle of your career, you're like, what else is there to accomplish? And I totally understand that. You need to challenge yourself. And I think that's what I mean, that's what the impression that I get is that you need to challenge yourself to see, like, what's next, what's the next best thing. And you have the confidence to say, I'm going to do it. And if you're not successful, you tried and you try again. I think a lot of doctors try it and then kind of give up. But I think you have that grit and that mindset to succeed. And it's nice to see that and be authentic in the optometry community, where all we see is a lot of success. We never really talk about all the failures and what got us there.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's sort of one thing I sort of promised myself, that if I'm going to share my journey on social media to other optometrists, opticians, then I want it to be the raw truth. I don't want it to be, you know, it's all sunshines and rainbow. It's hard, and you know, there's been failures, but you learn from those failures, and that's sort of key to growth, in my opinion.
It is, and it makes you stronger, and then the next failure doesn't hurt as much, right?
Yeah, that's it.
It just keeps going up, and then you just see where you land at the next step of your career, right? I think being your authentic self really helps other optometrists, you know, gain confidence and empower them. You often speak about the unfair female advantage. What do you believe makes women powerful leaders?
So I think we are so good at reading a room, multitasking, and leading with emotional intelligence. And when I say emotional intelligence, I think a lot of people think, oh, you mean because you're soft? And that's not what emotional intelligence means to me. I mean, it's that whole reading a room, picking up on things and picking up on those cues and those clues that, unfortunately, our male counterparts aren't able to have, because they're just not wired that way. They don't have that sort of maternal female instinct. And when you're leading a team, it is so critical to pick up on those little niggles, those little things that, as females, we can usually see, okay, that's going to, you know, snowball into something else, so let's try and nip it in the bud. And that's how you approach that conversation. And I just feel that, like, again, being female, having that skill set that you can tackle a conversation, the same conversation, in a completely different way and have a completely different outcome, versus not being female, basically.
Yeah, no, I've written an article in the past, like the female glass ceiling and the glass cliff, right? And I find that we've seen in eye care that there's not a lot of female leadership, and the ones that have gotten there have really had to work so hard. But the ones that kind of get that position, it's usually in a time of crisis in an organization, and they kind of set them up to fail, unfortunately, right? It's a harder time, but they need that leadership where they can kind of help lift people up, and they have the female like nurturing, right? But I mean, we can kind of do a whole podcast just on that. But I've seen it over the years, right, where female leadership, they have that, it kind of, their hands are tied on a lot of things and they're set up to fail. And then that failure kind of tracks them throughout their whole career, where I've seen it where others are like, well, he tried his hardest, let's try again at this company.
It's you're almost walking into like a battle. You're on the back foot already before you've started, and you completely agree that I think there's research that talks about the fact that when there's a female failure at that senior leadership level, it's interpreted completely different to how if a male failed in that. And it's exactly like you've said, you say, oh, well, he did what he could, let's move. Whereas if it's a female doing it, the stakes are so high already before you've even started the role. So it's almost like any mistake you make. I think I was watching something last night, I think, and in that it was a basketball documentary and it was a female basketball manager, and they said to her, you and I are going to be the first female manager, so you better not mess things up, because people are going to be scrutinizing you so much because you're female. And I just think, how is that fair? Like, why? Well, why is that fair? Just because that person is female in that position, why can she not get things wrong, but then a male can get it wrong, and it's okay, and it's a pat on the back and like, on you go, mate. It's such a shame. And I don't know what the profession's like over there, Maria, but here we're like I think 64% female profession, yet the leadership positions don't represent that.
That's correct.
And I don't know, is that similar to you guys over there?
Oh yeah, I mean, graduating class is 70%, and with leadership, big up to CEO and that level, C-suite is mostly male. And I've done a lecture on this, gender inequalities in eye care, a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And had the data for it. Exactly. And I think it's changed a little bit, but we do have organizations that kind of empower women and that, but I don't see any really, leadership positions that we get there, maybe VP and things like that. And sometimes some of these females, they have to prove themselves their whole career. And by the time they make it there, 60 years old, right? And so they had to do all that work. And the other thing that I think a lot of females experience too is they're sometimes the caregiver in the house, right? So they have kids, and they've been questioned. Like I've been questioned in the past. My kids are a little older now, but I said, well, I have a husband. He's a father too. He has a role, right? It depends what you want to do. And I think sometimes it's those biases that kind of hold some women back because of who's at leadership that can't relate.
And it's I don't know how you feel, but it's difficult when people are having these conversations, because sometimes I find if you go to say an event, whether it's a networking event, whether it's whatever event it is, and you're by yourself, I say, oh, is your husband looking after the kids today? And I'm just thinking, but they're his kids, like, they're his kids too. Yeah. Like, why is it that, like, it's he's doing you a favor by looking after the kids? Or people will say, that they organize meeting times and in one respect, yes, I appreciate being mindful, thinking that, you've got to work around kids, haven't you? You've got to work around school. But like you've just said, you've got a husband, like if you are married and you've got a partner, then, they are there too. They can do that too. So why can I not do the same or have the same opportunities as a male counterpart because that has children? Like, why are we different?
Sure. I mean, just the other thing from the optometrist perspective, let's not talk about C-suite, but optometry perspective, people that want to do some leadership things in the industry. Some people want to be speakers. We did some research on that. And it's changed a little bit over the years as different companies have female leadership. They, have more female speakers. But what, they said, to all things be fair, in the COVID world, post-COVID world, where you can give a lecture virtually, it could be. Well, I mean, there's no barrier now. Anyone can do a lecture at 8:00 at night, male, female, it doesn't matter what's going on at the house. I mean, everything's virtual now. It can be done. So it's those things that, come up, but there's a lot of new things that we can incorporate. And does it really have to be that hustle culture all the time? Not necessarily. I mean, I think you get more out of quality work and time.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, all these things that women have to deal with. I mean, it's a mindset, right? You talk about mental fitness and how it differs from mindset. Why is it such a game changer? And how can women kind of like have that when they sometimes they're kind of like attacked with a lot of things and some people try to tear them down?
Yeah. So I think for me, mindset is your thinking. So how you are predispositioned or conditioned to think, and that's your mindset. So you can have a closed mindset, negative mindset, growth mindset, positive mindset, whatever you want to call it. Mental fitness is I feel is completely separate to that, and that's because mental fitness is actually recognizing what's actually happening when I'm thinking, like what voice am I hearing and what is that voice telling me. So we have lots of different voices in our head, and it could be the procrastinist, it could be the hyperachiever, it could be the imposter. So mental fitness is actually recognizing that voice, identifying that voice and think, well, what is he or she saying to me? And how can I now sort of reframe that and make it a positive, but also learn from it so that it doesn't keep coming in and saying, you can't do that, you can't apply for that job, or you can't go and work at that clinic, you don't have the skill set. You can't just say multitask, you can't do a management position and test at the same time. And the mindset would just say, well, if you're positive mindset, you'd think, oh yeah, I can do it, that's fine. And the negative mindset would say, well, you can't do that. But then how do you shift from a negative to a positive? And that's via mental fitness. And the more you repeat those, what you sort of your mental fitness exercises, like your mental fitness gym, that's when you strengthen your mind, and that's backed with neuroscience and your neural pathways. So if you can recognize that voice, shift it, the brain starts to understand that, okay, when we see this or when we feel this, we don't need to go into survival mode like we're predispositioned to do. We can actually relax a little bit. We can analyze it and be more rational with our thinking rather than going into animalistic brain and thinking, oh no, it's all going to pot, so forget it, leave it. Let's run. So that for me is the difference between mindset and mental fitness, and how you can use it and utilize it to improve how you process things, how you manage things, and how you develop resilience.
Yeah. Over time we talked about like toxic workplaces and things like that, and they kind of burn you out. But I look back, worked a lot of different places over the years and just, talked to a lot of different people and just trying to grow, an online platform. There's been rejection, there's been, negative comments, things like that over the years. And what I found was, like you said, like it's your mindset, you're going to grow, but the mental fitness is there, right? So people that are going through like a toxic workplace, like I know it's hard and you have that negative thing on everything, but once you disassociate yourself with that, you just learn it as it's such a growth potential after that, because it's just that. And the people that are negative towards you are threatened by your accomplishments and what your potential is. So you got to actually kind of downplay some of your wins. So I think that you need to know that and need to surround yourself with women that are confident in themselves to help lift you up. I mean, if you have a mentor or someone in the industry that doesn't really help you and kind of sabotages your growth, it has nothing to do with you. It has all to do with they're not in themselves. You can't if you can't be a leader unless you're confident in yourself or you develop other leaders. Other people will reach out and I'll be like, I'll introduce you, no problem. And if you do better than me on something, that's great. Because you know what? I need to learn. I need to do better. And what is the next step? I mean, if you're not happy with yourself, you can't help other people, right?
There's so much in what you've just said there, Maria, that is like completely like a whole different podcast episode. But in terms of like, we're not just restricted by men. I totally agree. We are restricted by women as well. And I'm really passionate about that you don't find that many women that will at that sort of leadership sort of top level that will like champion other women and cheerlead other women, because they almost feel like you've said that if they do that and you go further, then that's sort of a discredit to them potentially. But then I always think as a mentor or a coach, whichever way you want to approach it, if that person that you are associated with and you've done something for grows, you automatically grow yourself. You've developed that skill set and you're enhancing somebody else. And like you've said, you can learn from them and sort of take the good, the good things that you see, the qualities, and develop yourself further. But then it's difficult when females are pulling females down, because you're thinking, guys, this is not what we're doing. We want you to sort of raise everybody up. But then it's difficult to sort of, I think, push past that. Because and is it because there's not many women up there, so they're thinking, well, do you know what, like if she gets there, then that's less room for me to be there. But then there's a place for everybody for their skill set, I believe, you know. But yeah, there's so much you said. There's so much what you've just said. I could go on for days.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the industry though too, goalposts are always moved, right? Unrealistic expectations or whatever the reason is to kind of keep that. You know, I think many high achieving women will struggle with guilt, burnout, imposter syndrome. You know, I've had burnout where you kind of just like, because the goalposts keep moving and it's unrealistic. So it's like, do this, and then nothing happens. So sometimes you're just taking a step back and being like, okay, well, I don't need to copy this person's journey. My journey can be different. There's no roadmap to success, right? Everyone has a little different. And what is your expectation of success? What is it? Some people just want to work 3 days a week. Some want to have an empire. Some just want to be financially free. Everyone's definition of success is a lot different. It's just what you want, and stop comparing yourself to other people, because that leads to burnout and imposter syndrome too. And a lot of things that we see on the internet on success stories are not real, right? Let's talk about shifting that mindset.
And I think you're exactly right. So the questions that I would normally ask anybody that I sort of mentor is and I think often people would ask is, what does success look like to you? Because like you've just said, success to one person might be, I just want to work 3 days a week. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then a success to somebody else, like somebody like me, would be, I want to build multiple businesses to have, you know, time freedom. However, I feel like the disconnect occurs when the person that's wanting to do 3 days a week and is doing that, and that's successful to them, then pulls down the person that's actually wanting to build multiple businesses and saying, why are you doing that for? You know, why do you need to do? Why don't you relax? Why don't you take it easy? But everybody's, like you said, everybody's built for something different. Their wants and needs are different. Success looks different. So that's what I do see sort of, unfortunately, quite often, where people are using themselves as a barometer to sort of either, it's great when they're using it to sort of forward themselves, but it's not so great when they're trying to pull the other person back to sort of bring them back down to where they feel it's comfortable for them, but not actually seeing where the path lies for the person that does want to go a little bit different to them.
No, you're right. I mean, it just depends who you surround yourself with and who you're working with, and then what your goal is, right? I think there was something posted on, it was on Facebook. It was an image. It was a Ferrari in a dusty place. And, you know, and then it's just where you are, right? I mean, you know, and then you find your team, people that you want to build, like surround yourself with, and what the same mindset is, where, you know, some are like, wow, you're building this. Wow, great. Have you looked at this? Have you done this? Or other people are maybe threatened by that. And they're like, well, maybe I'm not achieving more in optometry. I just want to work 3 days a week. And that's fine. I mean, it just depends what you want. And some people just want to do research. Some want to just work part-time. You know, it just depends what they want to do. But I think you surround yourself with, but also, if you want to get to that point too, I think a lot of personal development is self, right? You have to teach yourself and find it, because everyone's journey is going to be a little different. And the advice from someone who did it 30 years ago is not going to be the same now, right? And that. So I think, you know, having a little bit of that personal development, that self-starter, and being a little more tough-minded, I think, like you said, to kind of get through that when you have those pull downs, because you're going to have those days where people try to pull you down.
And I think for me, this is what I sort of bang on about quite often, is that I don't know what you guys call it over there, but we call it CPD here. So continued professional development. And I always say that, what about the person? Where's the continued personal development in optics? And unfortunately, I don't feel it is there. And I totally understand it's a profession, it's an industry, you know, it's the onus is left on the person to develop themselves. But then when you look at sort of other industries, just say tech or banking or, you know, STEM careers, they have like whole programs to develop, their employees personally. And when you aren't maybe part of like a big corporation and it's put on you, how do you know how to put, like how do you know? Do you know what I need to do some personal development? Like how do you get to that? And yeah, I feel you only get to that in a certain point in your life where you think, you know, you've matured and you start looking at other things and think, okay, maybe I need to invest in myself a little bit more. But then I think, imagine those people that were personally developed in optics from when they first qualified, or even prior to that, for when they were at uni, and they're having those personal development lessons on resilience, on mindset, on leadership, all those things through when they start their career in the university to coming out of it. How much more mentally fit and robust would those people be? And that's just, I suppose, it's a hypothetical question. How much more fulfilled potentially would they be having that toolkit and that skill set to know, do you know what, this is success for me and I'm happy with that. And if it's not success for me, what do I need to do? What course do I need to do? Who do I need to connect with? What circle do I need to be around? And that was another reason that I sort of went into the social media world last year in terms of LinkedIn. I just thought, you can't be what you can't see is a phrase that's often quoted. And I firmly believe that. I haven't seen in this industry, and I don't mean that in a big-headed way or anything or disrespectful way. I haven't seen anybody in this industry where I think I want to be like her, and I haven't. And in it, like, it's a shame, because I'm just thinking, I'm not saying people should feel they want to be like me, but then I want to show them the possibilities that you don't have to be just an optician. You know, there's so many different skills that you can use in the profession. Our profession is so wonderful that you can go into research, you can go into like pharma, you can go into like dry eye, you can go into so much, and success, and all of it. You know, you could potentially do all of it. And I just don't feel it's celebrated enough by industry figures that are female, unfortunately. And like I said, I don't mean that disrespectfully. And that's why I just thought, well, I'll be the change. You know, I'll try and be the change. I don't know if I am the change, but I'll be that voice, because at least I know I've tried, you know.
No, you're right. It's good to take that leap to do that change. I mean, I think it comes with some negative comments and some hardship over the years, and you're not having the support, and kind of walking your own path and doing it by yourself. It is tough, but I guess, you know, you grow from it and people will respect it. You know, you might not have someone post it on, you know, media and say it, but you get a lot of private conversations saying thank you for what you do. And then I think it's just them being confident in doing that and speaking up, for whatever reason. And, you know, personal development, you know, I've seen like to doctors, like, I just have a practice. Well, you know what? I go to a lot of conferences and I'm in, try to, you know, learn dry eye, try to learn a lot of things. And when I come out of the meetings, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know anything. Right. The more you know, the more you don't know. Right. So
yes, you know, yeah.
And I think it's challenged me to kind of grow over the years to be a better clinician, but also, you know, for that leadership, that mindset. Can I be at the table? Can I have, and yeah, I think we know more than we think we know.
Yes.
And I think a lot of those leadership, people like look for advice from optometrists too, to guide them. They don't have all the answers either, right? They just know how to extract it and cover it in a sense to make it look like they're asking a question when they don't know. So a lot of us are like that, right? I don't know anything, but I think there, we all have the ability to be a leader if we want to. You know, emotional intelligence plays a key role in work, right? Like how does that strengthen with leaders? Like, emotional intelligence over the years, just talking to a lot of different doctors and kind of, again, reading the room and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, and I think we're just going back to what you just said in terms of when you're in the room and they may not know the answers, but you do know the answer, but you don't know. But if you're not in the right room, you're not going to know that you know the answers, you know. And it's about position, like, you know, being confident enough to believe in yourself, to enter those rooms and to have those conversations. And I think emotional intelligence in the workplace, in leadership, I've seen a massive shift over the past few years where people are now thinking of it not as just fluff or woo-woo. You know, it's an actual thing that is backed by neuroscience. And I think because it's tangible now, people are like, okay, how can we be more emotionally intelligent? However, I do feel the workforce is changing. Gen X, Gen Z will not stand for the stuff that you and I would have stood for back when we first graduated. Like, they're very much like, they're a completely different mindset. Their expectations are different. And if we don't lead emotionally and be in tune with that, we do risk losing an amazing workforce to burnout,
No, yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you give to women who want to lead boldly but fear being too much or labeled as difficult or not easy player on the team? And sometimes they're labeled like that because they can't be controlled, or they're feared, feel like just they want to ruin a reputation, unfortunately, in the industry.
First thing I would say is just do it. What have you got to lose? And then the other phrase that always comes back to me. So I love Mel Robbins. I think she's amazing. And her let them, when she sort of says, well, in that situation, let them do think what they're thinking, but let you do what you want to do, and separate the two, and that's sort of a quick thing that you can just start to embed in your mind, that when you're in those situations, you feel like they're thinking I'm a bit too much. Well, let them think I'm too much, but let me progress with my plan. Let me think, what are the next steps for my career? And then also, are they actually thinking you're too much? Or is that voice in your head that's saying to you, they think you're too much? Is that your like sabotaging voice saying to you, do you know what? They don't like you. But do they not actually like you? And if you tune into that voice and pick it up and just have a conversation with it and say, well, how do you, and you try and quantify it, give your mind the data, what has happened physically or quantifiably that you can prove to your brain that person doesn't like me, other than you think they don't like you. And I think once you start unpicking those thought processes, and once you start using slightly different language to speak to yourself and how you speak to yourself, because how we speak to ourselves often in our head is not, we would never dream of talking to anybody else like that. The sort of things that we will say to ourselves, like, who are you? What do you think you're doing? Blah, blah, blah. You would never probably speak to anybody else like that. But why do we do it to ourselves? Why do we mistreat ourselves and stop ourselves from growing and shrink ourselves to fit with some ideology that's in our head of what people might think of us?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think in the industry too, we have where people decisions are made of who to like because of where the organization they work, unfortunately. I think you should be able to have an opinion of what is positive or negative, and then just because a company might not like something, I find that some people within that realm might, disguise themselves as like they don't like them, but one-on-one, you're doing great work. How do you deal with people like that in the industry where it's two different faces, unfortunately?
I mean, it's difficult, really, because part of you thinks, well, you're being disingenuous, really. You're following the crowd, but then have a voice of your own. Have one of my old chemistry teachers used to say, have the courage of your convictions. And he always used to say that to me in the classroom when I was unsure whether I had the right answer. And he would just say, Pretty, have the courage of your convictions. And and that phrase has followed me through in life. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to stand for this because I believe in it, regardless of what other people think of it. But then that requires, like you mentioned earlier, Maria, a certain level of self-belief, self-awareness, and self-confidence to be able to do that. And I think for example, that in that hypothetical situation, if that person is saying, in a group setting, yeah, I don't like that person, but in one-to-one, they're saying, that's great what you did. But then that's a reflection, that's a self-reflection that person has to take away and think, you know what, that isn't me, that's not genuine in what I'm doing. So how can I potentially put my views forward to the people that don't believe and make them believe, rather than just going with the crowd?
Yeah, of course. And finally, what does empowerment mean to you in the context of modern leadership?
I think
we empowered a lot of females today, I think. So.
Well, I hope so. I think empowerment to me is just feeling the fire in your belly, like feeling that, that drive, that grit, where you think you hear something, you listen to something and you think, you know what? Yeah, absolutely, I'm going to do that. Like, why did I not do that sooner? And I think empowerment can change the world. And I think we need more of it in optics. We need more of it in our female community in optics. And I just think if you can empower like I mentioned earlier, if you empower the next generation, you can genuinely change the whole outlook of the whole industry, that going forward. So that's what empowerment means to me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for being authentic, for doing what you do in the eye care industry, even overseas, empowering doctors here in the US after they listen to this podcast. Real conversations. I always appreciate those, and taking a stance and talking about things, because that's true leadership in eye care. It's not just behind closed door conversations. So
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks,
and for anyone that wants to reach out to you, is there an email? And then again, tell us what your podcast is so we can listen to that and be inspired.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. I'm on Instagram. The podcast is on YouTube, the Women Money Business Podcast. And you can find me on my website, which is drprettybasra.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.